Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Luis Borrero Visual Artist. Happy New Year's Eve to everyone. Thank you for joining. Today I have a really exciting presentation about Rembrandt's late style and the materials and techniques that he used. We're going to be preparing a ground. I have some video that I've pre-recorded and I'm recreating one of his grounds that I found in a technical bulletin that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. A lot of exciting stuff. We're also going to be talking about his Imposto technique, which is pretty unique for an artist of his time. So stay tuned and thank you for joining. Also, I want to thank everyone for your wonderful support, your wonderful comments. I've been reading through a lot of the comments and there's some amazing questions, amazing comments, so thank you. We're almost at 750 subscribers. I really thank you for your support and let's just continue to learn some things. All right, so let's just get started. Let's look at some references and the material that we're going to be covering today. So I have here, let's just switch this so you don't get the glare. Today I'm going to be talking about just the regular references that we've been using. Now remember that this is the second part to my other live presentation on Rembrandt. I focus on his early paintings, his early style. And in this live presentation, I'm going to be talking about his late style. And to do that, I'm going to be sharing a wonderful article that I found on Google. And there's some fireworks going on in the background. I apologize. It is New Year's Eve. People are celebrating. So, a wonderful article titled "A Corpus of Rembrandt's Paintings" by Ernst van de Veteren. I don't know if I'm saying it right. My Dutch is not very good, but hopefully, you get the point, and you could look them up on Google. I'm going to be sharing this article on the description below, so you'll be able to look, through the article yourselves. It's a wonderful article, and I found some very very amazing information on his grounds. And initially, I was going to focus on doing a demonstration by using impastos for this live presentation. But one of the hallmarks of Rembrandt's late style is the use of his materials, how he used the materials that he had available or that he didn't have available, which we're going to be talking about that in just a minute. And how he used those materials in such a creative ways to create these amazing paintings with texture, atmosphere, and I'm going to be sharing all of that information with you guys in this video. So the first thing that I want to share with you is just some basic information about the references. So we're going to be focusing on the grounds. He used two different types of grounds. He used a double ground that has been well documented by the National Gallery Technical Bulletin. And again, you could go into their website, nationalgallerytechnicalbulletin.org, I believe it is, or you could just Google it. And in particular, this is volume 20, and it has to do with the style of Rubens and Van Dyck. And the irony of it all is that this ground that Rembrandt was using is very similar to the grounds that Van Dyck and Rubens were using during their own time, and documented by de Meyer. De Meyer was an author from the 17th century, and I always get this glare from the lights. Let's see if I could, let's see. There we go. So this is the image that I want right here. So they find in Van Dyck's paintings and also in Rubens a double ground. And what is a double ground? Well, it's essentially a priming that is composed of two layers. The first layer is usually a red earth or any type of earth color, but in this case, it's usually a red earth or orange red earth. And then that is applied for the first layer, and then on the second layer, they usually apply lead white with some sort of brown, umber, or black. And so it's a double ground, red in the first ground, in the first layer, and gray on the second layer. And this is found all over Rubens paintings and Van Dyck. And to my surprise, they also find it in Rembrandt's paintings, as documented by this wonderful article here that I'm going to be, and I'm going to be sharing some images, some chemical analysis. Again, this is from this wonderful article, and it's from the Rembrandt project. Let's see here. So I'm going to share some images. I also have some images, but okay, so let's just take a look at this other books just before I go on. The Art in the Making, another amazing book that I mentioned in the first part of the Rembrandt's early style, and then Rembrandt the Painter at Work by the same author of this article. He's an authority. I also shared a video on the comments that kind of highlights some of his research. So my research on the channel and for this live presentation is based on those articles and these books. So make sure that you check that out for yourselves and explore some of the information. Always, I want to be as transparent as possible about the information that I'm sharing. I'm just, again, recreating some of these techniques based on some of the research that I found. So, so let's take a look at that double ground. I have an image that I pulled from this article, and I'm going to be sharing it. All right, so here we have a survey of some of Rembrandt's grounds, and these grounds he used around in the 1630s, prior to the 1640s. And what is a double ground? Well, it's essentially, why would painters use a double ground? Well, it seems that these canvases were commercially prepared. And the reason is, my belief is that there were workshops set up, and these formulas are documented by de Mayerne in his treatise. There's a famous treatise by de Mayerne. I'll be sharing that in the description below as well after the video. And he documents these recipes to use potter's earth, which is essentially a clay, as the first layer, and to let that dry, or sometimes not. Sometimes they will apply it back to back, wet into wet. And this just makes a very, very smooth ground. And I'm going to be showing you in 2 minutes a ground that I prepared using this very technique, using lead white in the top layer. And it gives you, I've worked on these grounds, and they're wonderful. They have the right amount of absorbency, but they tend to be more popular with a very polished style. In the case of Rubens and Van Dyck, they're painting in a very, very polished style with a lot of detail. So these grounds will be more favorable. And also Rembrandt's early style is also very polished. But as he moves on to his late style, Rembrandt becomes preoccupied with the ideas of texture, tangibility in the paint, meaning impastos, and atmosphere. And those are developments that were not unique to Rembrandt. Titian was a painter that was already exploring these very concepts early in the 16th century, or excuse me, in the late 16th century. And of course, that influence reaches Holland, and Rembrandt is a recipient of that influence, right? He never left Holland, he never traveled to Italy, but there were other painters that would have been aware of Titian's work, and this was influential. The Italians call this type of painting la pittura macchia. And I just want to show you an image of this type of painting and Rembrandt's development. It's a picture, it's a painting that I saw at the, I think this painting's at the Louvre, and I could be wrong. And here you could see just an amazing array of textures, a preoccupation with dragging the paint, with working with impasto, There's some contemporaries of Rembrandt's that mention that he paints with a loaded brush, and he finds the atmosphere and the smoothness by just keep applying paint on top of paint, meaning texture on top of texture. This is a remarkable painting. I love this painting. Look at the impasto qualities in the beard. And this is just very thick paint, very thickly applied, and he achieves a beautiful sense of chromatic qualities, and also textural effects. And this is very different from this painting that I have here, Van Dyck. This painting, I mean, let's just put these two paintings side by side so you could see. I mean, this painting by Van Dyck right here is very, very polished. So it's a very different style. And you can see that Rembrandt sort of departs from this very more academic style of very polished, very like a porcelain type of feel to the skin. And he finds his own path. And how does he arrive at this artistic conclusion? Well, that is part of what I'm really going to set out to explore here in the live presentation, is by the use of materials, the creative use of materials that would have been available and they were available to artists, but by using them by daring to use them in a creative way, Rembrandt created a new style, and this is unique to Rembrandt. So let's just go ahead and jump. Before I go on, let me show you that ground that I'm talking about. This is a double ground, okay, and this is an 18 by 24 canvas, so it's a little bit too big for the camera, but you can see the red coming through. I've shown this surface here on the live presentations before, and there's a little bit of the red ochre peeking through. So I primed this linen, or prepared the linen with a rabbit skin glue, which I'm going to demonstrate later on how to do that. And then I applied the red ochre with some chalk, and then the second layer has lead white, stack process lead white. It has a little bit of umber and some charcoal black. And these layers are applied with a knife, okay? And you get a very smooth surface. You could also pumice the surface, which we're going to do in a little bit. This is a pumice stone. It's a modern pumice stone. You can find this at any 99-cent store or anywhere where they sell a lot of Chinese products. They usually sell these for women's feet, and it's just you get a very smooth surface, ironically. And this is mentioned in the old treatises. It's a pumice stone, and this one's a processed pumice stone, but you get a very smooth surface by just running it in a very sort of circular way, and wiping the excess with a wet rag, because obviously it has lead. So you could also do that for the first layer and then apply the second layer. I'm going to show you how to do that. So this is the typical double ground that is described in the National Gallery Technical Bulletin, and it's found in Rembrandt's paintings from about the 1630s. So about 1642, Rembrandt is commissioned to paint the Night Watch. And if you have not seen the Night Watch, this is one of Rembrandt's most amazing paintings. It's in the Rijksmuseum, and it's a huge painting. And as I was reading through these articles, I found an amazing material, and something that I was aware of it, but I had never fully prepared this ground before. And this is the first time that I'm recreating that ground. I've recreated many grounds before, but this one in particular, and it's using quartz. Rembrandt used quartz. And what is quartz essentially? Well, I got curious and I started doing some research on different types of sand and different types of quartz. And it dawned on me that Rembrandt, after I started reading the article, Rembrandt was just using sand, and at first you just you read the information. You go, this is he's using sand to make the grounds. Um, well, it makes sense. I mean, it's there. Fresco painters from the early Renaissance and all throughout the Renaissance used sand as an additive in the lime plaster. So this was a material that was already popular with artists. Artists were aware of sand, its properties, and sand is composed of many minerals, including silica or quartz. And this is a big component of, I mean, this is what they call in Spanish a carga. Carga is essentially, it's a filler. And you use it to, well, essentially give some plastic qualities to the lime plaster, strength. And it dawned on me, well, probably Rembrandt was just going to the beach, and which is nearby in Amsterdam. There's a whole coastline, and just grabbing sand from the beach and grinding it down and using it in his to prime his canvases because it's dirt cheap. You just go to the beach, you pick it up, you grind it down, and you could fill the weave of the canvas with this material. And that is indeed what I found in this article. The article has a reference, and if you are going to read this article, I think, let's see, in page, and I'm going to look it up right here for you. Let's see. In page, I think it's 4, it says that you will find up to 60 to 80% of sand in Rembrandt's grounds, which is pretty amazing. 60 to 70%, I mean, it's just essentially just sand. And he usually combined the sand with the pigment just to give it color. This is not a unique recipe to Rembrandt. Palomino describes the use of a clay earth to essentially as a filler and to use red ochre. So this is essentially very similar to Palomino's instructions. He does refer to the silt that comes down after high tide on the river, and to use that with some red earth and essentially prime your canvas with that and put it drier. So it's consistent, and it's essentially a cheap material. You could find it anywhere. So what I did is I recreated this ground, and I live in a tropical island here in Puerto Rico, and I live right next to the beach. So what I did is I went to the beach and I got some regular sand. I went to this beautiful beach that I usually go to. And the sand here is very, very fine. Now, I discovered something interesting. The sand in the tropics tends to have a higher amount of calcium carbonate because of the reefs. And the sand in the north tends to have a higher proportion of quartz. But all sand, for the most part, has a high proportion of quartz. So I figured, well, let me just go ahead and try. I'm going to go ahead and get some sand, regular sand. I'm going to wash it because of the impurities and the salt in the sand could be harmful to some pigments. So I just, and I've worked with fresco before, so you definitely want to use washed sand when working with fresco. So I apply the same technique and I prepare a video. So in this video, you're going to see the whole process. I brought the sand back, I washed it thoroughly, and then I decided to grind this because they find that indeed the sand was very, very finely ground. They find shattered particles and evidence of of grinding, of abrasive action on the sand. So that must mean that it was either ground on a mill or ground by the artist with a stone, and that's exactly what I did. So I ground the sand very, very fine for about an hour, and then what I did was I let it dry overnight, scraped it again, and mix it with linseed oil and brown ochre, following a recipe that is found in this very article. So I prepared a video for you guys. I'm not going to narrate. I'm just going to go ahead and share the video and show you the whole process. And then after the video is done, I'm going to go ahead and finish priming the canvas for the first time here on the live presentation. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the video that I prepared. So there you saw the entire process of preparing this canvas, and I'm going to try to get, there we go. So now you can see the entire canvas. Here you can see the edge of my palette. I'm going to show you the ground. So this is the canvas that's already been rabbit skin glued. Okay, this is a linen canvas, 100% linen, with a sort of rough weave, which is typical of what Rembrandt would have been using. I rabbit skin glue the canvas. Okay, I use rabbit skin glue to seal the pores of the canvas. This is typical of the way that 17th century painters treated their canvas supports. And this is a pumice stone. I mentioned this earlier and you saw me using it. Now, before you apply the rabbit skin glue, you should pumice the canvas, and also afterwards. So let's just go ahead and see how this works for the first time after hundreds of years. And they don't really find a lot of artists that use a quartz ground. There's not really any contemporary artists of Rembrandt, maybe some of his followers, but not really many painters from the 17th century or later use this type of ground. So I imagine that it does darken because the sand becomes a little bit transparent. So okay, so let's just go ahead and use the same technique. I'm using just a spatula or palette knife. This is a large one, and I'm just going to go ahead and apply this ground. And wow, this goes on very smooth. And again, this is the first time that I'm doing this using this type of ground. I have never used this type of ground before. So I'm discovering the technique with you guys here live for the first time. And this goes on really smooth. There's hardly any brown ochre on this ground. This is what is amazing, and it's very smooth. I mean, I don't know if the camera could pick it up, but this is going on very smooth. They find that the grounds that he used are very thick. So let me just go ahead and move this. And of course, I'm going to have to report to you in a couple weeks' time how this dries. This has a dryer. Brown ochre is a dryer. That's why he probably would have used it. And already I could see, I mean, as I work with this, that this just gets rid of the weave of the canvas in 2 seconds. It's a wonderful filler, and it makes sense. It makes sense that he would have used a material that is found just about anywhere on the planet, sand, to prepare the ground. This is indeed the color that you get, and this color is not unique to Rembrandt. He would probably have been influenced by a lot of artists that were influenced by Caravaggio. Caravaggio in his late period also used darker grounds. Now Rembrandt, the paintings by Caravaggio in his late period, he used burnt umber. And burnt umber is a horrible dryer. It's, I mean, it's a wonderful dry, but it causes a lot of defects. So the brown ochre does not. You don't get that content of very, very rich content of manganese, which is sort of makes the ground very brittle. So, and in this case, there's just hardly any, just enough brown ochre to color the ground. Okay, and I could just smooth this. It's almost like spackling a wall, and the sand is just superb in this case. So this probably was left to dry. Was it sanded? I'm not really sure. You could sand it if you want a very smooth surface, but I imagine because Rembrandt was interested in textural effects, which we're going to talk in 2 minutes about, he probably did not sand the surface down. So it sort of depends. So as you can see, I mean, this is, I don't know if the camera could pick it up, but the weave of the canvas is just essentially getting fully, yeah, so there it is. So this really does an amazing job. And I ground it for about an hour and a half, brought it down in particle size, and it's pretty good. It's pretty amazing, actually. I mean, so this is what they find, the scientists find in Rembrandt's paintings, late paintings, and it seems that it was a solution, economical solution, and a technical solution. So, all right. So that's the way to. This is the regular method that I employ to prepare my own canvases using lead white. So you could essentially use this technique with any color. I imagine that you could use red earth as well. There's some. Now, when you look at the chart that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, you'll see that there's an array of fillers. He also uses chalk. He uses red earth. It all depends what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to just go for just a portrait painting, and you're going for more of a chiaroscuro style, this seems to do the job. Now, if you're looking for a lighter palette, well, of course, the lead white is going to help you. This is just very dark, and more for sort of a very chiaroscuro dark style. So, which is the style that he was practicing later on. All right. Well, I could go ahead and finish this at some other point, but you get the point here. This is a priming that was used by Rembrandt. Okay, and I mean, you could make short work of this with this priming. I mean, they only find one single layer very thickly applied, so there's a recreation of that technique. So I will report back and see how that ground works in a couple weeks, just to let that dry. You have to. It's important to let the ground dry. You can't just work on the oil ground right away, because if you do that, you're going to get problems in drying. So the next thing that I want to talk about is before I leave for the day, I want to be talking about Rembrandt's impastos. Now, his impastos, we've talked in the last live presentation on Rembrandt. I talked about the lead white, which is a source of mystery for a lot of artists. I have a few videos that you could check out in the in the posts that I have made in the past. I have a whole video dedicated to stack process lead white, the recreation of the process, and this is indeed the white that Rembrandt used. Now, the story doesn't end there. I talked about using different types of oils boiled with litharge to achieve the impasto qualities, and there's a whole array of chemical analyses, and they find heat-bodied oils in Rembrandt's impastos. And that makes sense. I mean, he's using sort of a fatty paint that is going to be flexible and is going to accentuate his impastos. Now, in this book, here's some photos of his impastos, okay? And in particular, this photos, it calls my attention because when you look at this photo, you see that Rembrandt is, it seems like he applies the impasto, very fatty paint, but also with a lot of sort of text. It seems sticky, but it seems that he applies also a glaze, and he does some glazing on top, and same here. And that is typical of Rembrandt's late style. He'll apply some impastos or build up the impastos, and then it seems like he applies a glaze to bring out the texture. And I went ahead and recreated, I took some video and recreated this very technique. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago, I talked about the pigments, the palette that Rembrandt would have been using. It contained pigments such as Steel de Grain, Cochineal Lake, and Madder Lake. Okay, and I think I have a question here, and I'll be able to answer you the question in 2 minutes. And it seems like Rembrandt used an array of, he would build up these impastos using his stack process lead white and heat-bodied oil, and from there he would essentially glaze to bring out. I have a question, Michael. Thank you for coming by. Is this surface absorbent? Well, yes. I imagine that is, there is some absorbency to the ground layers. I've used, now let's just take a look at or analyze. So sand is composed of minerals. It has calcium carbonate quartz, and these minerals do have absorbency. So you're not going to get, a ground should never be shiny. It should never repel oil paint. It should always hold that paint so you could layer more paint on top. So it makes sense. It's the same thing with fresco painting. The arisio, which is the first layer in the fresco layer, when you're working with fresco, it has a high proportion of sand. And as you move up in layers, you use less sand and more lime putty. And by the last layer, you're using the intonacino, which is just pure lime putty with just a very small amount of sand. So this makes sense. It just will hang on to the paint, right? So thank you for asking that wonderful question. Yes, these are important questions, and yes, and make sure to go ahead and ask. I'm here to answer any questions. It's there's a lot of technical information. So getting back to the impastos, so you have a buildup of white lead using perhaps a fatty oil or not. It seems for the higher impastos, the lightest impastos, he did use a fatty oil, but not necessarily for the other impastos. And he would have glazed those impastos with a very, very transparent color. And then it seems that he wiped, and if you could just take a look at some of these, maybe we could get a close-up. There's, let's see, I'll get my camera to get really close. There we go. So you see some color that is sort of falling in the valleys of the paint, and that could be aged varnish, but there's a lot of paintings by a lot of masters from the 17th century that do not exhibit this effect. So this was indeed, my opinion is that it was on purpose, and he was applying glazes over the impasto. And I prepare a video for you guys. In this video, it's one of my own paintings, but I'm sort of recreating that technique because I'm very interested in some of these techniques and using them in my own work. So I went ahead and used lead white in the first layers. Then I applied the second layers or the last layers of the impasto using a heat-bodied oil. And then in this demonstration that I'm going to show you, I glaze with a mixture of carmine and black. And I will proceed to wipe off the glaze with a rag, and the glaze sort of falls in the valleys of the paint, and it leaves this sort of embossed, sort of beautiful relief texture that gives you a lot of tangibility and a lot of three-dimensionality. So this is a technique that I believe Rembrandt would have been borrowing from etching, which is similar. When you are working with a plate, you're scratching into the plate and sort of working ink into the plate and then wiping it off to create tonal effects. So let's just take a look at that video of this impasto technique that I recreated. So there's some, there's just the impasto from the heat-bodied oil. I'm using a old-fashioned brush, and there I'm applying black, bone black, and carmine. And I'll just glaze those light areas, just a regular glaze with heat-bodied oil. You could use a little solvent, and then I'll just wipe. I'll wipe away with a rag, and I'll continue. I'll do another pass. And you could just imagine your Rembrandt working in this way for hours and for weeks and for months. building up these impastos and these textures in his paintings, not everywhere, but in specific areas where he wanted to bring out that sort of tangible effect. And the lead white, the stack process lead white behaves like no other lead white. So what you're seeing is really just a very beautiful, unique quality of stack process lead white. And that is similar to what you see here. I mean, these sort of jagged edge paint, you can't, I mean, if you buy commercial paint, you won't be able to achieve that because there's a different crystal morphology about that. So I hope there's just some insight of the techniques that I've discovered on the style of late Rembrandt's paintings. And I'm sure there's many dimensions. So my proposal is to work with a copy for the next live presentation. Now that we've highlighted some basic materials, a basic palette, and some grounds, and we're going to be recreating some paintings. So again, for a lot of you that are joining today, I want to thank you for coming by. Today's New Year's Eve, and I really appreciate the support. I think I have one more question. Again, if you have questions, let's see. And so, very good question. Doesn't such a thick and heavy substrate run the risk of cracking? Well, from what I see in the research, there's a lot of, there's there's one last image. There's the image of the grounds that contain quartz, and I will be sharing this article. I imagine that there's always a risk of cracking with oil painting, and you see the paint. I mean, this painting is cracked, and there's some cracking there as well. It seems that there's not any more cracking than there would be on a lead white surface. So my opinion about the matter is that there will be some cracking always on oil paintings. It is just part of the medium, but it doesn't seem that the substrate that has quartz, the ground that has a quartz content, would cracks any more than the lead white. So also the flexibility of the oil. I mean, if you're using linseed oil that is aged and washed, and so those things have an effect. And also, if you're rolling the painting, I mean, how many times was the painting rolled? So in the conservation, if there's a lot of humidity, if there's the painting is exposed to a lot of humidity, so these things all have an influence on the final outcome and the longevity of the painting. So very good question, and always a concern for artists. I'm always concerned whether a painting will crack and whether the conservation of the painting will remain or where it will be affected. So and again, these are propositions, as I call them. I mean, I read on this stuff and I recreate it because it's just so interesting to see an artist like Rembrandt use sand, a material that we take for granted. I mean, all our buildings here in Latin America are built with concrete and sand, and even in Europe, you see you go to Italy and it's lime and sand. I was in Pompeii 2 summers ago, and it's all, those buildings are lime and sand, and they're 2,000 years old. So there is something to sand after all. So what is it? Well, I'll let you guys know in about 2 weeks' time. I want to make sure that this ground dries correctly, because Palomino does mention that legamo, as he calls it, the river silt, does not dry very thoroughly, and you have to add dryers. So I imagine that's the reason that Rembrandt used pigments such as brown ochre and umber and other earth pigments that have iron oxides that aid the drying. And also they do find a lead content, small lead content that probably came from the oil being boiled with litharge or any other lead dryers such as red lead. So interesting propositions. Um, my idea here is just to experiment, to present the information, and to see how this all works out. Because again, a lot of artists are not interested in these in experimenting. They're happy to go to the store and to buy a lead primer, very expensive for a 20-foot canvas. So probably sand it will work out better. So anyways, thank you for coming by. For most of you, if you're here for the first time, thank you for being here. And for those of you that join week after week, I'm very pleased that you're here on a New Year's Eve talking about Rembrandt. And thank you so much for subscribing to my channel and for supporting the channel. Your questions are welcome, and I've had a lot of proposals for future videos, such as videos on Vermeer techniques and techniques on El Greco. So let's just continue with the explorations and see what we could learn. Before I go, I want to again thank you and tell you a little bit about my courses on Udemy. I have 3 courses on Udemy that are dedicated to drawing. If you're just getting started and all this information about painting is a little bit too much to digest, you can start with the drawing course, and that could set you on your way to sort of begin exploring the culture of painters. And yeah, so wonderful, wonderful resources. I also have a book list in the description below that you could visit, and find out some of my books that I recommend. These are affiliate links, and I do earn a commission from them. So check them out if you're interested. And if you're interested in live classes, you could visit ateliersanjuan.org, and I have some live classes available that you could sign up for now for the new year. So a lot of resources, and if you want to explore other channels, I'm sure that there's tons of information elsewhere as well. But let's be creative, let's paint, let's make art, and let's stay safe in the new year. So thank you very much again for being here. I really appreciate the support, and I wish all a happy new year, health, and lots of good wishes. So, all right, thank you again. Have a great, happy new year.